Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, Group Publisher of Roofing Contractor, and welcome to our Best of Success podcast show. It's always an honor to have with me my good friend, Trent Cotney, partner with Adams and Reese. Trent, thanks so much for joining me.
Jill, it's good to see you again.
Well, Trent, we are always very grateful for all your insight and especially the time that you always set aside to talk with us so you can give contractors listening some really good insight. And right now, there's no doubt everybody needs some really good insight on the one big beautiful bill. There's a lot to unpack there and a lot that has happened. But what do all the contractors listening need to know?
Yeah, so an enormous bill. I mean, we're talking 1,000 pages. And last podcast we did, I was uncertain whether or not they would have the political momentum to get it done by July 4th. Well, sure enough, they did. So there were some changes, though. And what I want to do is just kind of hit the high points. There's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack. First, the big ones that most of people are aware of is the elimination of taxes on tips and overtime. It provides a deduction for American-made cars and even like trucks. These are personal, not fleet, for car loan interest. And there's some additional SALT deduction caps up to $40,000. That's for those states that have state tax. It gives you some additional relief there. Some of the things that are beneficial for roofing contractors is that the Section 199A deductions, which are the pass-throughs, most of us, including myself, have pass-through corporations that are S corps, things like that. That 20% deduction was made permanent, which is a great thing. There's some additional expensing for research and development, some additional stuff that we saw as far as expense capping for Section 179, but it is going to be phased out like we discussed last time on the podcast in 2026. A couple of things that are interesting from a workforce development standpoint. One is they're allowing Section 529 and Pell Grants to be used for short-term training and credentialing. So you could use this for VOTEC schools, which is very interesting. Instead of, only being able to use those for colleges or universities, you can use it for VOTEC or even temporary apprenticeship programs, that kind of stuff. So I think we're finally kind of getting to that point where everyone is realizing that college isn't the only path anymore. So that was a good thing to see. There's some other things in there that I thought were interesting from a VOTEC standpoint, in that you're continuing to see support, like I said, from the Section 529 and the Pell Grants, but there's some additional monies that have been set aside for research and other projects that I think are going to be beneficial long term. All in all, for contractors, probably a pretty decent bill. Obviously, I have concerns about the spending and how that looks, but there are a lot of tax benefits. I encourage anybody that's listening, make sure you digest this with your CPA, your accountant, so that you can understand how to take advantage of it. But a lot of positive things here. I know I'm going to be going through it in a lot of detail towards the end of the year as well. So,
Yeah, well, I know that we'll be diving into some more of the details on these as time goes on because there's a lot there, and I'll be excited to get some of your feedback on the research that
yeah,
those dollars are going to be going toward. But also
absolutely.
in the meantime, though, Trent, I know OSHA just came out with some new enforcement. Can you share what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the hallmarks of the Trump administration was deregulation. And part of that is looking at the Department of Labor, which, as we kind of discussed before, the Department of Labor has two parts. They've got wage and hour, which deals with minimum wage, overtime, record keeping. And then they have OSHA, which is obviously the safety enforcement arm. On July 14th, just a week or so ago, OSHA announced that it had updated guidance. This is internal guidance for penalty and debt collection. And what they wanted to do was really focus on minimizing the burden on small businesses. Over the last, 5 or so years, the penalties have gone up significantly and have kept track with inflation. So you can face, on repeats now, you can be looking at six-figure type penalties. Under these new policies, employers with, up to 25 employees can have the ability to access a penalty reduction of 70%. So 70% off of what it is. If you have, previously, this was only available if you had 10 or fewer. So they're increasing the amount that of employees you can have in order to take advantage of this. They're also looking at additional reductions for immediate abatement. So if you take steps to address or correct the hazard, you could be eligible for a 15% penalty reduction. And they also offer a 20% reduction if you are a first-time receiver of a citation. So this is sort of par for the course of what we saw for the last Trump administration. Overall, enforcement is still there, but we're not seeing the high dollar penalties, the willfuls, and as concentrated as we were under the previous administration. So it'll be interesting to continue to track this, but I think this is probably some good news for contractors.
Yeah. So Trent, is it normal that have other administrations like offered discounts like this before? Is this just kind of like a tactic to try to get them just to pay the bill?
Yeah. Typically, there's always, and keep in mind, this is guidance. So guidance within, within OSHA. OSHA is obviously, given its authority legislatively, but it has a code of federal regulations that provide all the rules and regulations that govern it. Outside of that, there are policies and procedures that sort of dictate how the enforcement and compliance of those rules are handled. And part of that is the penalty structure. And there's always been reductions for size, for example, depending on how big you are. But what's interesting about this is that they're expanding that. Right, they're expanding that beyond anything that has existed in the past. So it's really taking into account small businesses and the fact that even a $5,000 or $10,000 fine for a small business may be something that prevents you from making payroll. So taking that into account, I think, is critical. The goal of OSHA should be to ensure that all employers are safe. Right, so you want to there has to be a fine line between a penalty versus a punishment. And I think this goes a long way to helping, cement that idea.
Got it. And lastly, Trent, what do you recommend if a contractor has gotten an OSHA citation like this and they feel like it could be really detrimental to their business? What do you recommend?
Yeah, as you know, we've talked about it plenty of times before. I always believe, you should be proactive rather than reactive. So the goal is to make sure that you've got a good safety program in place, that you're taking, proactive steps to ensure that there's a culture of safety from the top to the bottom. But it's also important that your supervisory people understand how to deal with OSHA when an inspection is happening. Okay, once a citation is issued, a lot of the facts are kind of already put in place. The one thing I would, advise our listeners is, don't just focus on the money. The money of a citation is important. Reductions are important. But what's really important is the nature and the characterization of the citation. Because if it's something that you do day in and day out, you could easily be subject to a repeat violation 6 months from now, 2 years from now. They can go all the way back to 5 years, right? So I really try to focus on the nature of the citation and see whether or not I can either recharacterize it or remove one that I know is going to be problematic because it's something that is in the core operating, business that they do every single day. So that's what I would tell everybody is don't just focus on the dollars. Look at the nature of the citation, see what you can do to either make it more specific or eliminate it.
Sounds great. Well, as always, Trent, thank you so much for your insight. We were very grateful for your time. If anybody has any questions, how do they find you?
Sure. They can email me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or anywhere social at Trent Cotney.
Fabulous. And if anybody has any questions for us or any topics you want us to ask Trent about, reach out to us at roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com, and stay safe and healthy. And we can't wait to talk to you soon.